That's true. Mark Sanchez is out there.
Yeah.
And welcome to the Down in Front Podcast, the official podcast of downandfrontpodcast.com. I am your host, Warren, and I'm super excited to talk about The Disaster Artist with a couple of my best friends. How's it going, everybody?
Woo! I did not hurt her.
I did not hurt her.
Hi, Warren.
I'm
Oh, hi, Mike.
hi, Warren. That beautiful voice, everyone, was the mouth of the South. Brylan, how's it going, man?
Good morning. Welcome to a breakfast podcast. I think it's pretty cool. It's nice. It's sunny outside. It's an early day. I'm doing well. What I'm drinking right now is some nice Starbucks Christmas blend dark roast that I put into my Cafe Du Monde coffee mug. And this is 32 ounces of coffee, so it's going to keep me awake through our wonderful podcast. And what I watched recently is I finally got around to seeing Get Out. And I was hoping that the hype around it didn't disappoint me. And it did not disappoint me, which is good. It is a good movie. I would say I'm surprised. I'm not going to call this a horror movie. This is a suspense thriller. I think it's weird that it kind of got publicized and advertised as a horror movie, even though there are some horror elements, but I don't ever feel like it goes into and it plays around with horror tropes. I don't feel like it goes into the horror genre that much, though. And it does have a clever use of social commentary to it, and I wish I think they played the social commentary a little safe. I wanted them to take more risks with it and get maybe a little bit more serious about it too. And I thought it would have been amazing then. But yeah, it's definitely worth watching. It's a really good movie.
Bryland, how would you...
I'm glad that the hype didn't ruin it, because I know a lot of people were talking about that movie a lot. Like the biggest thing was, you have to go see that movie sort of thing. So I'm really glad it still was good for you.
Bryland, how would you have felt? So the original ending I think they shot and did was at the end, spoiler alert for a movie that came out a year ago, at the end, the police car, instead of Rod, it was supposed to be the white cop from the beginning. And then he would have just got arrested and popped for a triple murder. That would have been that.
I think that'd be that'd probably be a braver choice, just because it'd be like, hey, guess what? Even though you've uncovered this big conspiracy, the reality of society is still setting in, type of thing.
Also, Warren, if I start seeing you start swirling that teacup, I'm out. I'm done. I'm quitting Skype. You said that as soon as he picked it up. It's like.
You wake up in Charlie Hunnam's body.
I wouldn't hate that. That's way better than my body.
Awesome. Well, thank you for hanging out with us for this breakfast podcast, super early morning podcast, so I'm pumped about that. We also have the beautiful Shredder, who's hanging out with us, and Mr. Mike Blewitt. What's going on? What you sipping on, and what you've been watching?
What's happening? I got some English breakfast tea by Red Rose. I think they actually are from England. Vaguely remember my parents getting me that, or Ireland. It's delicious. No flavor to it whatsoever, just a bunch of caffeine. As far as what I'm watching, watched the Psych movie. Actually, when we were doing Coco, I had to go run away and I don't know if you can listen very carefully. Spoiler alert for that podcast. I pre-recorded some of that stuff and then was laughing in the background of my own podcast, watching this stupid TV movie with some friends. But it was absolutely wonderful. It's characters that I absolutely enjoyed when they were on their main TV run, and they really returned to form in the same manner.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised. I'm trying to get
And I know,
Megan to do a one-off, just like me and her talk about the Psych movie for the Down Front. So we'll see how that goes.
That would be awesome. Please make that happen. I know that like you can only watch that on USA Today or USA like streaming site or something like that.
Yeah, it's the USA Network. It's hilarious.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm holding out for the Monk movie.
I mean, if there was gonna be a cameo, it was gonna be in that because they're in San Francisco now, and they still didn't. I think Tony Shalhoub's done with the character.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's a bummer. That's a good character.
Yeah.
And I am Warren, and I'm your host. I am also sipping on some English breakfast black tea with honey to give it a little bit of flavor. So there you go, Mike, for that. And I finally got a chance to see Cars 3, one of the Pixar movies I think I just missed, whether it's like over the summer or something like that. And man, that movie was pretty sad. That movie was good. You know, it was definitely better than Cars 2, but not as good as Cars 1. I think a lot of people said that. And I can understand why, like, that movie, I think, was made, you know, it's a kid's movie, and they had a couple of, like younger elements to it, but definitely kind of talking more of, like, adults and, like, parenting and, like, just moving on and, like, just making sure that you're okay with, like, the future. You're okay with the present, be able to kind of move on towards, like, the future and stuff. So they have a lot of things that, like, really kind of prepare you and kind of get you set up for, like, okay, like, what happens when, like, this thing that you want to do from now on, like, may not be the best for you. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's actually probably a good Pixar movie for senior citizens because it's just like, hey, it's all about accepting when your time is over and you need to move on.
Exactly. And it's a tough, like, that's definitely like kind of a tough movie to watch too, especially when, you know, you talk about, especially at the time of, like, NFL players and players who, like, still want to play and can't, you know, physically or mentally, and a lot of different things. Like, it really kind of was, like, doubling down on a lot of those sort of elements. So I thought it was kind of a powerful way to kind of do that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been watching. And we have all had a chance to watch The Disaster Artist, starring James Franco and Seth Rogen, Dave Franco. I mean, like, tons of people in this actual one. And I know that there was
Rafi.
a good... Yeah, I know. I think it was. Paul Scheer was in this movie, too. Judd Apatow, spoiler, was in this movie. But there was a good amount of buzz going into the movie itself. So I'm excited to talk about a few of these things of, you know... Rylan, were you one of the Room sort of people? Like, did you, like, obsess over The Room? Was that, like, your thing, and that's why you're excited to go watch this movie?
No, I've always heard about The Room and its ridiculousness by proxy. I used to work with a guy that's, like, really into, like, the movies that you don't really see, like, the big budget movies or anything. He's always about, like, the deeper movies, and he was always talking about The Room. And I watched the highlight reels on YouTube, and I was like, yeah, this is ridiculous and dumb. I can see where people would get enjoyment out of it. But that's as far as I ever got into it.
Okay. What?
So I love this movie. The first time I saw it, well, actually it was kind of weird because it starts with, like, 3 20-minute long sex scenes, and my friend fell asleep in a bed next to me, and I really just didn't want him to wake up in the middle of that because that's awkward. And we Charlie Dayed and franked that night. Woke up in the next morning, shook hands. We're like, all right, we're gonna go our separate ways now. And so, you know, ever since then, I've been showing people this awful movie, including, like, one of my favorite nights of all time. I saw The Room at an art house theater with Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero there, and they did a Q&A beforehand. I don't know if everyone knows, but traditionally you play football in the audience, and, like, you throw spoons at the at the screen when like this in the background of the movie. There's all these spoons that are just hanging out, and so I got pelted by 100 spoons that night. People regularly yell out the lines. You know, like, there was basically no line that was completely silent, just because, like, if you get into this, I call it the modern generation Rocky Horror, where people just go have a good time. and see this awful movie. So I've seen this movie like 30 times. I love it.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think that was funny because especially me, like, I didn't hear really anything about The Room until like maybe like scatterings early last year. But like my roommate kind of explained a couple things to me this one, so I was really kind of disassociated with it. But like once I got into it, I'm like, oh, so it's kind of like a Rocky Horror. That's hilarious. I think that's really funny how they're like kind of comparing both two because I'm a huge Rocky Horror fan. I'm like in that. I know the lines. Like me and Josh were part of the podcast. Like we went there. We went to the showing that was in Boston, which we thought was hilarious. And people like throwing like rice and different things. So I definitely kind of get that element. But it was like a very different one because one's like a musical and one's just not. You know. So I thought that was a very very funny just tone just kind of going into the movie, how people are excited. And Blewitt is showing us he actually has The Room on DVD. Ooh, that's I don't even know what a DVD is, but
what's a DVD player?
What's those DVD players you got there?
I totally forgot I have that. I don't know where the DVD cover. It's probably in my car. My car's trunk has just like excess from when I moved 2 years ago, but it kind of looks like some shady person from New York's like back alley's salesperson. It has just all this assorted junk. I've got like random DVDs in there. Like makes no sense.
That's hilarious. So I mean, we're pumped. We're excited. We're going to give you our entire kind of spoiler section for right now. We're going to give you a quick kind of intermission, and we'll be right back in a moment. So kind of stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for our entire episode of The Disaster Artist. We'll see you soon.
Bye. They still have yet to figure out where that all comes from.
And we are back. Let's unpack this movie. We are talking about The Disaster Artist, and this was directed by James Franco, and stars a bunch of people. So we're going into our entirely spoiler sort of section. I'm going to start with Brylan here. Brylan, tell me some things you enjoyed about the movie.
I found this movie to be a really great parable on what does friendship mean. And I think the relationship between Greg and Tommy in this movie is done really well by two real brothers, Dave and James. They definitely play their parts really well. I think Dave is actually a really good standout here because there's some moments in this movie where you go through this movie thinking like, Greg, why are you hanging out with this dude? He's so weird and everything. But there's those scenes like the first time Tommy and Greg meet up in a cafe, and Tommy's like encourage him just get up and start reading the lines and stuff. Which one I think is great acting. Is a great acting lesson. Is like if you're shy, go to a place that's uncomfortable, talk about it, and then just go out there and do it. And two, I think it speaks to what their friendship is. Like Tommy was this very positive force for Greg to actually pursue his dreams, and it also becomes. When you are friends with somebody, it also can conflict with other parts of your life. Like when he has that opportunity to work with Bryan Cranston on Malcolm in the Middle, and he has to make that choice because Tommy doesn't want him to go because Tommy's afraid to be alone. That moment you can see in Dave Franco's face is just that choice that Greg makes. It's like, I'm already kind of with this guy here, and he loses his girlfriend and a job opportunity out of that split second, which is definitely, I think, tells a lot about their friendship. I think James Franco has a really tough job to do in this movie, and it's interesting to see, is James Franco doing great acting by acting as this odd bad actor? and it's tough to balance that line of, is he just parodizing, or is he actually bringing some like multiple facet elements to Tommy? And I think he does a solid job with that. And it's also great to see like the whole Apatow crew just jump up out of different roles here. So just seeing people like from the League, and seeing people from just Seth Rogen's character or Andre's character in this, and even Hannibal Buress in here, have these small parts, but they have a really great they have really great personalities that can bring a lot to just those brief moments in the movie.
Bryland, a couple of things on that. I working backwards, I agree with you, and I don't think that there's ever been a film that's had like the secondary salesperson has been the quality of actor as Hannibal Buress, which is kind of cool. Yeah. Like that's usually just a nobody. Like who wants that role? I do. That'd be cool to be in a film. Please cast me in your movie. I have no acting experience. But at some points, I'm kind of on the fence with like kind of two things you just said, where like it did feel like James Franco and Friends at some point. It almost felt like, again, I was going back. I really like The Room, and so it almost seemed like a pet project at points, rather than like that. What it could have been. A minor criticism, because I think most of the time it worked out, but every once in a while it's like, oh yeah, you were like drinking with one of your buddies, and you're like, hey, do you want to hang out on set for the day? Let's go shoot some movies. The other thing is, James Franco still looks like James Franco. This is my biggest criticism, in that like he crushed the accent, but it's like Tommy Wiseau is such a weird-looking dude, and James Franco is such a weird-looking dude, that, like, at some points it pulled me out of the movie that I was like, no, I'm still watching James Franco, not this oddball of a human being.
Yeah, and, I definitely agree with, like, the visual elements, because, like, you would look at these characters and you're like, oh, it's the Franco brothers dressed up. You don't see, like, oh, who is this character I've never seen before. It's just because of that notoriety, they built this Apatow crew that, like you said, all their films got that feeling like a bunch of friends got together that afternoon to make a film. And you still feel that in this film too.
I will say this: the work that Dave Franco did with the longer hair, I saw a preview for it, like the only trailer I think they released. And I thought it was Greg Sestero. I thought he was just in the movie. So, like, I guess to say props to that one. That look was, like, absolutely perfect. But, yeah, James Franco is James Franco. Like, there's just no getting around that.
Yeah. And one thing that I thought was really good that they did was that after credit scene where Tommy comes up and starts talking to James as Tommy. It was just like a fun little meta exercise in acting, and I kind of liked Tommy's acting in that scene. I mean, it didn't feel like weird. I was like, oh, this guy put a little effort into it, and yeah, he's not going to be the greatest actor in the world, but yeah, he could play a scene. It's fine. And I thought that was a nice little homage, a little celebration of Tommy that they added to the movie. And my last win is going to be, Alison Brie. She's perfect. She does no wrong. I always love seeing her on screen, and she's also an amazing actress. And more of Alison Brie, the better.
Absolutely more of Alison Brie. I was super bummed that I didn't get a chance to, like, I stayed for the shot-by-shot, scene-by-scene credit scene, and I stayed for a long time. I didn't know that there was going to be an after-credit scene. I was so pissed. I was like, why? But of course. So I was really bummed that I actually missed that. So hopefully they kind of put that on YouTube. I'm avoiding YouTube right now for spoilers, but hopefully they put that on YouTube so I can at least kind of take a look and kind of watch that, because I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Blewitt.
Yeah, a couple things. I think that I personally loved the insider references. As someone who's, again, seen this movie a million times, like, I loved the stupid little crap that I was like, yup, that's exactly that. Like, how they kept coming back to the whole cancer thing. If you haven't seen that film, you don't know that's like, it literally is just, they bring it up in one scene and then they never talk about it again. It's like, and that character's in other scenes after that. Like, it's they really did their homework in figuring out what really makes this movie tick. And a lot of the insider references are what kind of keeps people from, coming back to it time and time again. I also applaud this. I kind of read about it beforehand, that, but I didn't know they were going to put so much of it into the movie. Apparently they did pretty much shoot 75% of the movie over again. And so, yeah, like, apparently, like, when trying to decide all those scenes, because there's so many great scenes. Like, there's so many things that are just like this, and because, again, none of it's self-referential, there are all these, like, tiny little vignettes that kind of, like, Chris R., with Denny, that drug deal almost never gets talked about afterwards. Although, I will say this, it's one bit of clever writing that Chris R., Tommy disarms him, and, Johnny, and that's the gun he kills himself with it later in the movie. That they also don't bring up, but if you're clever about it, you can kind of, like, remember. They don't say that's the gun, which I think is the only reason that scene exists, because they never talk about Denny's drug problem again. By the way, what's-his-face was great in that role as Chris R. Sexy man
I think
guy.
that was hilarious.
Like,
that was,
amazing.
All that he's doing. Like,
I didn't recognize him when he was playing Chris R, but then he's at the premiere, and I'm like, what's Zac Efron doing here?
Yeah, it's just Zac Efron. But yeah, apparently they shot, speaking of things that I want to see on YouTube, apparently they shot most of the movie, which I guess for a trained group of actors isn't that hard to do, because there's no, like, you don't try it again for feeling, like usually when they make these movies, you deliver your line several different ways and they splice it together in editing. In this case, like, there's just the right way, and so you do it a couple times to get the right way, and then you go on to the next scene. And there's also no special effects in it, or it's probably a pretty easy thing to make. I would love it if they completed it and released their own perfect copy with just James Franco in it. Like, to me, that would be amazing. Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting, like, all the actors they chose are just a little hotter than the counterparts.
Well, I mean, that's... When you're getting, like, when you're having an audition process that kind of feels like a porn audition, you're probably not going to get, like, the greatest talent. Although, who knows? Apparently, with the whole Harvey Weinstein thing that's came out, every audition was a porn audition at this point.
Jeez.
Yeah.
No.
He needed to go!
Oh, boy.
Gone! Be gone!
Boom.
Yeah.
What a terrible human being.
Yeah, what a god-awful human being.
Yeah.
Arizona, please don't be sponsored by Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, please still sponsor us, Arizona.
Yeah, future sponsor Arizona Iced Tea. I can't believe we're all drinking tea, but none of it's Arizona. Our sponsor's gonna kill us.
I mean, if they make like a hot tea, like a hot like black tea, that'd be amazing.
That would be sweet. All right, non-second order. My biggest win for this, it really... The hardest challenge about making a movie based on this is that, and I think that they really wrapped it up at the end, where this movie has heart. Like, it's not... I've seen plenty of terrible, bad comedies that are just, like, really terrible juvenile jokes being said by, like, the most mediocre actors and actresses. Like, this movie wasn't that. It was terrible. It's hilarious because of that. But at the end, I think it's so funny because you know that they're being serious and trying to make a legitimate piece of art. And so that scene at the end really resonated with where, like, Greg was talking to Tommy and saying, like, hey, this might not be the reaction that you were looking for, but you made something genuine here. And these people are genuinely enjoying themselves. And that's the hardest part about making this movie, that you can't make it a straight-up parody, because the movie itself isn't a parody. And you can't make it a straight-up, like, serious dramatic. Like if they made every scene like the sex scene, and just made it like a constant bickering, it wouldn't, it wouldn't capture the thought process on it. And they absolutely killed it with that.
Yeah, there was something very awesome and also very deep. Not only for that moment, there was a lot of beats in this movie that, you can call them like roller coaster, but it's like, we were watching these characters being filmed on a movie that was supposed to be doomed for failure, and we knew that the movie was bad. They knew that the movie was bad, but at the same time, there was still something there, and there was like that creative process to kind of go into it, and it's just very interesting, much like you were talking about, to see that, what he's still trying to make this sort of thing. And I love the fact that, he mentions it and he's talking about himself as, being like the Alfred Hitchcock, and how, he was always like angry at all of his like his performers, none of them liked them. So I like a lot of the parallels that they were kind of drawing into that, especially kind of talking about that point, Blewitt. So
yeah.
I like, it was a weird line that they had to keep kind of crossing and making sure they don't go too far.
Right.
And so when you look at, what kind of movie is this? It's kind of tough to pinpoint exactly. You can't really kind of put it in one genre.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
One last thing. It also humanized these characters. You watch movies and like you see Iron Man and you're like, all right, well, there's like part of me that's in that character and that's why I relate to it and that's why I enjoy it. But I also can realistically look and be like, yeah, I'm not a billionaire playboy philanthropist. Whereas with this film, it did a great job showing the behind the scenes that all these people are just in fact people. Most of them are trying to make $1 in the world and like trying to be the best human beings they can and like live their lives in a fulfilling manner. And I thought, like, granted, they're goofy characters. Tommy Wiseau is a strange human being, and Greg is like the perfect, straight man for that because, realistically, he has no insane talents. Like the dude got lucky that he was on a cult classic, and he's made bank, I'm sure, from that. But it realistically humanized all those people that we only maybe see on a 20-foot screen. That scene with James Dean was like. I mean, how many of us have taken road trips to stupid road trips with your friends, spur of the moment, last minute, and then kind of meant something, after that. I still remember going to IHOP at my first day after my freshman year of college at 5 a.m. with my friends, watch the sun rise, eating pancakes in Revere. It was it's stupid, but he kind of sticks with you. Yeah, those are my biggest wins.
Cool. I think that was actually kind of pretty cool. I'll definitely kind of talk about a bunch of my wins. And, one of the things kind of going on, a lot of the points that Blewitt and Briley had talked about was, this was a motivational and, inspiring movie, especially to the sense that, we start off in kind of an acting sort of class, and he's doing, a Tennessee Williams, and how he loves that particular sort of writer and that playwright, and he's doing the literal only thing that people probably know, Streetcar Named Desire and the Stella scene, and all he's doing is saying just her name, and we've known Marlon Brando has done that role, and it's really something to think about, this part, when it's all said and done, how ridiculous and how silly that it may be, this person has a dream, and he is not letting anything get in the way of that dream. So much so that, he went to an acting class, that person, he went to a Stanislavski acting class, and Stanislavski is just like Meisner is the father of acting and, modern things. So obviously these people have been dead for a very long time. But he makes a joke about that I think is really hilarious. I'm just laughing at this is silly. But he went to this directing or acting class, and he's like, hey man, you don't got it. Everybody wants to be the hero, but you just may be known to be a villain. And a lot of times in a lot of places in which a lot of people go into these acting auditions and stuff, they think they want to be the leading person, and a lot of directors are going to then put them down and says, you look like you're more of a character actor, and so you should probably kind of focus on that, and that resonated a lot just from experiences that I've seen, and it really gets people down. And Greg got lucky because he looks good, so he got a he ended up getting the agent, and he does like a little bit of work, but he notices that it's not much there. And it was also nice to humanize these people they're moving to LA, like, we're just going to be actors. Let's just go and do it. And sometimes that may not necessarily work out for you. So I thought that was like a really kind of powerful moment to say, they kept at it. They kept at it, that motion. Like, it was a bad script. Like, literally everything. This was doomed to fail from the beginning, yet they still was going through it. And that motivation, that loyalty from Greg, and just kind of staying with Tommy the entire way was something I definitely loved, to the point where at the end, this is something I poured my heart and soul. We poured our heart and soul into this, and people, like, I was hoping that people would love it, and people absolutely are laughing at it. But at the same time, that's still a win coming from that. So I like that, just how uplifting that was. They probably didn't say it, but he said, with the whole pinky swear of, follow your dreams. Like, this, it's just me and you. So I really liked that aspect of it a lot. One
thing on top of that, I think it's really good. I think it's really good that the Apatow crew did this, because I think any other group of people in Hollywood, if they made this film, be like, as soon as Tommy and Greg decide, hey, let's go to LA, it's like, oh, wacky hijinks pursue, and look at this funny thing, and they just try to push oh, look how funny this is, where it's like you get a natural, you earn natural laughs out of what they do, and it's like they play it for reality, but that just the eccentricities of Tommy, or Greg's loyalty to Tommy, it's just, there's some natural humor that comes out of it.
Yeah, it's it's also on a different level too. Especially when he approaches Apatow in the restaurant, and he's trying to, he's trying to kind of quote and do a Shakespeare part of it. That's funny. Just as a general audience, that's funny. That's also funny. The next level is, well, that must suck for Apatow, because he probably gets that a lot, arguably. And then you keep going, well, that's actually very sad too, and there's a lot of these levels of sad and tragedy and yet comedy, and there's always a spectrum with that. And so just that one scene, you can get a lot from it. Well, he thought that would work. That's what people thought, quote unquote, Hollywood. That's the only way to do it, and probably not so much.
I really like the scene where the acting coach tells Tommy to read the lines without the accent at the Stanislavski school, and it gets so weird and so uncomfortable, and he makes the weirdest faces. It's great.
So good, so good. And I think one of the last things that I do love about it is this also is a very funny part to me, and I laughed at it, but I think it was probably on a different one. But the rooftop scene, and how he kept forgetting his line, and I've been a part of productions where everybody knows the person's line at this point. And it's maybe 4 or 5, 6 times over, or this is the 3rd or 4th day that we're doing it. So we all know the line. But this person still messes it up. So I love how everybody's just we don't get it. What's going on? And that continuous way of just kind of redoing it over and over, I thought that was very, very funny. And I remember that scene in the room. I was like, oh, I really hope that was how it really happened, because it was a very odd and weird scene in the movie itself, and they also kind of recreated that oddness. But I just love all the cringeworthy moments in this movie too, because it was tough to look away, but still very funny.
The water bottle scene was hilarious, where if that's really what got him to say that line, that's amazing. That subliminal tricking of hey, play with your hands so you don't think about what's coming out of your mouth.
Yeah. It's so strange, but yeah, I mean, so I'm pumped, because I'm glad that we like this movie, but we know it's not a particular kind of perfect movie. And Riley, what's some things that just probably didn't work for you for The Disaster Artist?
So I feel that the movie, and even though it does some really good jobs, I think for a lot of moments that it struggles to feel that it struggles with it. Doesn't want to be a parody of Tommy Wiseau and his making of this movie, or does it want to just be an earnest, kind of celebration of what they actually accomplished out of it. And there's just sometimes James Franco's portrayal feels more of just making fun of Tommy rather than trying to dive deeper into who Tommy is. I mean, they bring up these questions about, like, where were you really born? Where did the money come from? And I'm sitting there thinking, hey, I want to kind of go down this journey of, like, how can you discover, like, where did this money come from, or who he actually is? Because he's such a quiet individual, can you get a little bit more investigative about who Tommy's character is?
So, Brian,
and bring that up to the light a little bit more.
They don't know. I'll answer that right now for you. They still have
Tommy
no
won't
idea.
say.
Right, exactly. So you can't answer a question that doesn't have an answer.
Yeah, but I still find, like, even movies that are kind of biographical like this, that even if they go with what they perceive as assumptions, if it's done right, it can play off really well, or just add a little element to that character, even if it's not factual. I think, like, just having the idea of him, like he was in a car crash, and he says so to Greg when he first meets him, is that part of why he's so eccentric, or has he always been like this? That's, like, the biggest thing I'm curious about of Tommy. It left me just kind of like, I got to know very little about this character, but that's might be the point, and that might be kind of who just Tommy is. He'll let you in so much, and there's not much more you're going to get out of it. So it made me a little conflicted while watching this movie.
That's fair.
I think that was also interesting too, because there was a moment in which, you know, they talked about the car scene, and then, like, later on, like, offset that there was the actors that were, like, unpacking the script, and it was like, well, you know, who was, like, if Tommy is Johnny, then, you know, who was Greg to him? Like, who betrayed him? Like, did he have somebody who just, like, kind of broke his heart? And, like, I think the biggest thing that people always look for is, like, you know, the deeper meaning of what does this actually mean. And I was definitely thinking that through. Like, hopefully we can get some more answers and get some more information. But I just don't like.
But it'd be
talking about. I don't think we know. So.
It'd be disingenuous to the character, because, you know, again, there's a big following on the original film, and if you just kind of made up a backstory for this movie came out in 2003. So what are we at? 15 years almost. That this has been out and been, you know, there's people that will almost legally be able to watch this movie that were born the year the movie came out. You know, it's an R rating, so, like, you know, it's like there's a long list of people that have gone and, like, really treasured this. And so just to make up a backstory, just to fill in, you know, these expository elements, I think, unless you got it right, would be, like, pointless. People would riot if you just made up a backstory for them. That being said, it's kind of one of the great things about this stupid situation that we have, this stupid movie, is that we don't know, like, anything about it. You know, like, we know that he self-financed it. We know that he has no idea how to make a movie. He just kind of wanted to make a movie. Like, that's kind of part of the magic. You know, it's like the Wizard of Oz, where if you really don't want to pull the curtain away sometimes, because the answer's probably not as cool as you think it's going to be.
Yeah, and you could be right about that. But I think, like, it feels like, I mean, it's based on a book that Greg wrote, and maybe there's more in the book that can make this movie, or make this story feel more fleshed out. And I feel like they definitely captured, like, a very surface level portrayal of this movie. And one thing I thought would be more interesting is, like, at the very end, they're talking about how it became this accidental cult success. And we get a couple of, like, news clippets of him, like, high-fiving crowds outside of viewings and stuff. And I feel like the more interesting story about Tommy is, how does he handle that this accidental success happens to him? That he did make a bad movie, but it has an enduring point to it that people actually want to tune in and actually go see. And I think that journey is actually more interesting than the making of the movie. And I'd rather see that on the screen. And that's my criticisms.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go next. Thanks, Bryland. The one thing I'm kind of nervous and kind of cautious about is going into this movie. I was not like a follower of The Room. I don't know if I've seen the movie kind of beginning to end, kind of fully through. So I know that there's a lot of things that the more and more popular and how good that people will rate this movie will be, I think more people may go and may rate it poorly. Because they don't know, or they just don't get it, that that's a cult class. Like, they just don't know. They don't have all the actual context of that. So, that's one thing. It's not quite like a criticism of the movie, but a criticism of, that necessarily may happen. I definitely wanted to at least explore the relationship a little bit more. I felt like there was a lot of kind of unsaid things, and we really get like one scene of them like tossing a football back and forth, and exploring that relationship between that was great too. That was also awesome. But exploring that relationship, especially the fact that it was kind of weird. Dave Franco being a 19-year-old. Not sure if that was. I don't know at that point, but and then the facial hair that he had, I was like that. I don't know about that. But
those Francos have unique faces to them.
They have
There's no way around them.
It's crazy that because they kind of look like each other, but at the same time they don't.
Yeah.
I believe that's called familial resemblance, and that's about it. Dave. Oh, do you know there's a third Franco brother?
No.
I saw. He has like
Franco.
He has like 2 credits on IMDb. Of just like playing, they're like he looks exactly like James Franco. It's weird.
Huh. I gotta find it.
It's like Cooper Manning. There's the third Manning brother. Like no one ever knows that. He's like an insurance salesman.
He wasn't very good, so you're like, we're just not going to talk about him. I don't have too many criticisms other than the fact that it definitely seemed like, and I'm going off of again like there was a little bit too much focus on a lot of the side characters, and I'm wondering because the side characters were a bit famous, or if they really did have like those kind of thoughts and like elements of, there was a lot like Seth Rogen had a lot of lines in this movie, and Paul Scheer had a lot of lines in this movie, and I'm like, well, was that realistic, or because like that's who they're playing characters, and these are pretty famous actors, so I'm wondering if they just give them like some screen time for the sake of that, and if there wasn't like a bigger character, if that's going to be the case, more along the lines of like the director, for instance, who played the Stanislavski director in this one was I forgot his name. What's his name? He plays in. He's a writer. He also plays in Better Call Saul. He plays
Bob Odenkirk. It's Bob Odenkirk.
Bob Odenkirk.
Yes, thank you. So I like it that like he didn't say too much. It was just like a supporting character, and he had like a couple lines, and that was it. So I'm like, okay, well, why give more focus on other characters and not so much as all of them, which is good, but that felt a bit unbalanced to me. But other than that, I didn't have two other criticisms for the movie. What?
Yeah, a couple things. I talked about some of them earlier, but 2 things for me. First of all, the actor that plays Peter in the film changes, and they never address it. Like he's in an early scene, and apparently Tommy Wiseau got really sick of whoever that actor was, or I think no, the actor quit, and instead of going back and reshooting all those scenes, they just got a new guy, gave him the same name, and gave him the same backstory. So like he comes in and talks about what like his character had been talking about earlier in the film, and I think that's hilarious. And they should have done that. Like they didn't even allude to it because it was just the same guy through the whole thing. That was to me a huge miss because that's such a stupid thing. The other thing that was, and this kind of goes into it, where there was a lot of technical problems. They kind of touched on it where. They give you the camera set and say, hey, you can either shoot in this, type or this type. And he's like, yeah, we're going to do both. And his view of a multi-camera production was using, so like normally you have digital and then you have analog film and you just put them right next to each other and then you shoot, with the same thing, and then you could just treat them differently and edit them differently and all that fun stuff. And it's like an aesthetic design. In this film, he bought 2 cameras, the 2-camera set, and then positioned them at different setups so he could do like multi-camera angles. And of course, when you're cutting back and forth, you can notice the picture quality difference. And so, like, there's one scene that has, like, 2 different qualities depending on what angle they're facing. And they so, like, that's all throughout this film where, like, because he was kind of an idiot with the production, he was just kind of paying for it. There's all these technical things. There's something called ADR in film, and this is the biggest miss for me. There's something called ADR, automatic dialogue replacement, or automated dialogue replacement, I forget what the A is, where basically it's most evident when a character's back is turned. They can shoot a bunch of B-roll and then have that character change their line in post-production. You could sometimes tell, like, you could see that their jaw's not moving quite in sync, or the really funny one is when their jaw doesn't move at all, but you can hear that character speak. And so, you know, not super egregious, like if it's out of sync, most people won't notice that. What people do notice, though, is when the character's face is in the camera and their mouth is moving at a different time than the words you're hearing. Apparently, he was so terrible at his lines that, like, if they got a good visual representation, they just told him that they'd fix it in post. But when it comes down to it, he couldn't say his lines in post. So, like, the dialogue, they do it in post to clean it up, so like noisy sets, that sort of fun stuff. Maybe even, like, they don't want to change the lines. Maybe if the set was noisy or if there was other stuff going on, you just overdub it. And so you have half the movie, this character be talking, but the other words would be coming out of his mouth, and they never reference that once. And I just wanted to see that, because it ties into the whole thing that he's got a goofy voice and that, like, no one understands any, you know, Chris Tucker, no one understands the words that are coming out of his mouth. So, like, I wish they really didn't harp enough on the technical limitations that film faced, because I think that was absolutely hilarious. Sorry, mini rant over. I didn't mean to make that as ranty.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about criticism of the movie. That is what it is. Additional dialogue recording, or also known as dubbing.
Additional. All right, not automatic. Cool. I'm going to splice that in. I'm going to dub myself into that.
I really hope you do, and then you forget the evidence, and everybody hears that. Like, that's great.
Yeah, those technical issues were definitely noticeable in the side-by-side shots at the end.
Yep.
Because, when they're making this movie, they're showing you the making of the movie and not the finished product. But those scenes that they did recreate, the audio's perfect.
yeah. Part of the movie was technically too perfect, which is a weird thing to say. It's like, it was made by competent film writers, you know, which is, that should never be a criticism on a film, but in this case it is. Like, it should have been more terrible. I freaking love The Room. I'm going to see Disaster Artist again in like 2 hours. So yeah, it's so good.
Nice.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. That's my biggest criticism.
Yeah. I mean, and with that, like, we're excited. I mean, we're gonna give you a few of the lasting thoughts, and we have been talking about the Disaster Artist. And Brylan, you know, for our conclusion, like, what's some lasting thoughts to leave all of our listeners?
I would say the Disaster Artist is an enjoyable, enduring film about friendship that doesn't really get too deep into its characters, but maybe that's the point.
Yep.
I'm not sure. I conflict with it all the time.
Okay. Blewitt.
Deep thinking with Bryland. Yeah, this movie, to me, I think it's must-view, like, material. I loved every second of it. It was totally engrossing. It gave a little peek behind the curtain, even though I said that was a bad thing. It gave a little peek behind the curtain, not the full rip it off, on this magnus opus of a film.
That was a good one. I definitely say, like, much like Get Out that Brylan just saw recently, I think it's going to be helpful to go into this movie with people that you can actually talk this movie kind of through, of like some of the just ridiculousness of it. And there's so many kind of small and little things that we didn't touch on, but I like the movie a lot. I definitely would suggest, though, like, looking into The Room. not even studying it, but at least kind of watch it just to know what you're going into watching this film, just so you can get a little bit more out of it. But it's definitely a good movie. Even for me, not having enough all the information, that was still a very enjoyable experience. So go check it out in theaters today, and for the entire last week also. And with that, we are the Down in Front Podcast Breakfast Edition. We want to say thank you so much for kind of hanging out with us. Bradley, where can we find more of your work?
You can find me on Twitter, petting all the nice doggies, at Brilund, BRILUND. I'm also the host of the Gamescast, twitch.tv/DownInFrontPodcast. We are playing through Doom right now, and we're going to go kick some demon ass very soon.
Nice. Yeah, that was a lot of fun kind of watching you. Definitely kind of chatting you up, so thanks for that. Blewitt, where can you find more of your work?
You can find me at My&nbsp Music or My&nbsp Band, most major platforms. We realized that we got way too drunk recording the other night and pretty much have to start over on one song. So that's it. But we should have an EP coming out. I will.
Or go with it. It might be a miracle.
Right. Oh hi Mark. Oh hi Mark. Oh hi doggy. Yeah. So yeah, we should have an EP out though by start of 2018. So I'm sure I'll be ecstatic about that when it happens.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm excited to kind of check that out.
Things. Oh, I got nothing for Jesse's email. It was too. There's nothing that I could say that would be a joke about the Room because it's a perfect movie.
I got nothing for Jesse email at ymail.com.
Yeah.
Film Jesse's ass at ymail.com.
We are the Down in Front
umbilical
Podcast.
intercourse.
We have a lot of work. Our official website is downinfrontpodcast.com. Go check us out for our Instagram live reactions. We put back to Reddit. We have a Twitter. We have a Facebook. Literally everything, and our YouTube channel. So definitely subscribe. Please go and love us. To donate to us for Patreon. That's also something that we have going. We want to say thank you so much for kind of hanging out. I am actually doing something very fun with another Twitter channel that I end up doing called Friends with Blends, and we do 12 days of wine, kind of counting down for the holidays. So kind of stay tuned and kind of keep an eye out for that. We've just been reviewing a bunch of different wines. We did it last year, and actually a lot of fun. We just do a different wine counting down to Christmas. So we will be doing it again this year. So take a look out for the hashtag 12 Days of Wine. And thanks so much. And we have been a Down in Front Podcast, and we'll see you later.
Bye-bye. Bye.